Emily Carter moved through the sprawling base like a ghost. She was a quiet presence, efficient and precise, her uniform always neat, her movements unhurried but purposeful. To the men and women around her, she was the logistics officer, the person who ensured fuel lines stayed functional, supply convoys were ready, and the endless paperwork of war somehow made sense. She managed everything with calm authority, yet she remained almost invisible in the larger machinery of the military base. Soldiers would nod politely when she passed, ask a question or two, and continue on, thinking nothing more of her. Emily preferred it this way. Recognition had never been her goal. Beneath that unassuming exterior, however, lay a secret that few could have guessed. Before she had been reassigned to logistics, Emily had been a fighter pilot, a prodigy, a natural. Talent whose reflexes and instincts in the air had made her one of the most respected and feared pilots in her squadron. She had spent years in the cockpit, flying F-16s and mastering maneuvers that seemed impossible to anyone else. Every sharp turn, every barrel roll, every evasive tactic she executed had been drilled into her muscles through countless hours of practice and near misses that would have terrified most men. She had faced hostile skies, missiles streaking past her canopy, and lived to return home, often the only one in her squadron. But those days were behind her, or so everyone thought. After a minor accident during training, the military had reassigned her to base logistics, citing the need for her skills in supporting operations from the ground. Emily had accepted the role without protest, quietly shelving her wings and flight certifications in a drawer she never opened. To the base, she was a competent officer, reliable and unremarkable. She liked it that way. No one expected her to fly again. On this particular morning, the base hummed with the low-level chaos of a military installation preparing for routine exercises. Trucks rumbled across concrete paths, loading supplies and fuel. Soldiers jogged between hangars and control towers carrying radios, clipboards, and weapons. The sun glinted off the metal roofs, and the asphalt runways stretched like ribbons toward the horizon. It seemed like any other day. Emily sat at her desk, reviewing inventory logs and supply schedules, her fingers tracing lists of fuel types and quantities with meticulous precision. She sipped a lukewarm cup of coffee, listening to the distant roar of jet engines in the training areas. The hum of activity should have been soothing, but that morning something felt off. A faint unease tickled her senses, the kind she had learned to trust in the cockpit. She felt it in her bones, a warning that today would be different. Then, the sirens began. The piercing wail shredded the normal morning atmosphere, echoing across hangars and offices. Red lights flashed on panels. Soldiers froze, then broke into urgent motion, voices rising in panic. Over the radio, snippets of intercepted communications crackled, but no one could make sense of them quickly enough. The radar screens lit up, showing multiple fast-moving blips racing toward the base. Emily's stomach tightened. 8 enemy aircraft. Fast, aggressive, coordinated. They were coming for the supply convoys, aiming to cripple operations before anyone could mount a proper defense. Emily's eyes, trained over years of reading radar and assessing threats, scanned the data rapidly. The base had only one operational fighter, and its pilot had been called away for emergency maintenance. Another pilot was injured. There was no one ready to intercept. The commander's voice, tense and cracking with stress, rose above the chaos. "We have no available pilots. I repeat, no pilots." The room fell silent for a moment, stunned into disbelief. Soldiers glanced at each other, anxiety etched on their faces. The supply trucks on the runway were sitting ducks, exposed, waiting to be destroyed. Radios buzzed with frantic messages, but the panic was palpable. Emily felt a surge of adrenaline she hadn't experienced in years. Her pulse pounded not from fear, but from clarity. She stood slowly, a hand lifting almost reflexively. Every pair of eyes turned to her. "I can fly," she said calmly. Her voice was steady, controlled, but it cut through the room like a knife. For a moment, the room didn't respond. Some soldiers laughed nervously, unsure if she was joking. "You? Logistics?" One officer scoffed. "We need a pilot, not a clerk." Emily met his gaze, unwavering. "I am a pilot. A certified F-16 pilot. I've flown combat missions, logged over 1,000 hours in the air. I can intercept those jets before they hit our convoys. Trust me, or we all die out there." Her words hung in the air. Disbelief and skepticism rippled through the room. A few shook their heads, muttering, "She can't be serious." Yet some soldiers whispered, remembering her quiet confidence. In other matters, how she handled emergencies, kept calm under pressure. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't bluffing. The commander took a step closer, his brow furrowed. Every second counted. "You're sure you can do this?" he demanded. Emily nodded. "Absolutely. I can get airborne within 5 minutes." After a tense pause, the commander barked, "Do it. Get her in the cockpit, now." Mechanics rushed to the hangar, eyes wide with astonishment. "Didn't even know she could fly," one muttered, shaking his head. They scrambled to prepare the F-16, fueling it, checking systems, and running diagnostics as Emily raced toward the jet. Every step was quick, purposeful, but her mind was already miles ahead, thinking like a pilot, anticipating enemy formations, calculating angles, and preparing maneuvers. A hangar door rose like a curtain, revealing the fighter waiting on the tarmac. Its sleek body gleamed under the early sun, the metal polished and deadly. Emily's fingers brushed the cold fuselage briefly before climbing the ladder to the fence. Cockpit. Memories flooded her mind. Night flights, evasive maneuvers, the roar of engines drowning out fear, and the sheer exhilaration of aerial combat. Her muscles remembered every movement, even if her mind had kept her grounded for years. She slid into the cockpit, strapping herself in. The canopy closed, sealing her into a cocoon of technology and power. The jet's systems hummed to life. Beneath her fingertips, lights blinking, screens displaying critical flight data. She ran through her mental checklist rapidly, verifying controls, flaps, fuel, weapons. Instinct kicked in, and suddenly, she wasn't Emily the logistics officer. She was Emily the pilot, the one who had faced down enemy fighters and lived. The ground crew stepped back as the engines roared to life. Vibrations rattled through her body as the F-16 powered forward, and Emily felt the familiar thrill of acceleration. The jet surged down the runway, lifting smoothly into the sky. The horizon stretched wide before her, the clouds waiting to be her allies. Below, the base personnel watched in awe, radar screens showing the approaching threat of 8 enemy aircraft. Emily leveled off, eyes scanning the skies. The enemy formation was moving with deadly precision, confident in their superiority. They didn't know who awaited them. They didn't know she was coming, and she intended to make them regret underestimating her. The first rush of adrenaline hit her chest. Her fingers danced over the controls, instinct taking over. She could feel the jet as an extension of herself. Every maneuver was calculated, precise, and lethal. She tilted the nose slightly, angling toward the enemy's path, ready to turn fear into opportunity. Back at the base, the soldiers stared. At radar screens and the distant horizon, hardly daring to breathe. The quiet logistics officer, so unassuming just minutes ago, was now the difference between survival and disaster. Emily Carter had no time to think about their doubts. Every second, every decision mattered. One mistake could be fatal. But she thrived under pressure, and the skies were hers. The distance closed fast. The enemy pilots would soon realize that this was no ordinary flight. The quiet, unremarkable woman they never noticed was about to confront 8 of the deadliest aircraft in the theater, and she would not be underestimated. And as Emily squared her shoulders, her jaw tightening, she whispered to herself, almost with a grin, "Let's see how they handle this." The sirens didn't stop. They screamed over the base like angry banshees. Soldiers scrambled in every direction, some clutching radios, others dashing to refuel trucks or grab weapons. The tension was palpable, and Emily could feel it vibrating in her chest even as she rose higher in the sky. 8 enemy fighters were closing fast, their red blips glowing ominously on radar screens. Every second that passed increased the danger to the convoys, the base, and every life dependent on the defenses that weren't ready. Below her, the chaos unfolded like a poorly choreographed scene from a war movie. Soldiers shouted at each other, radios crackled with fragmented instructions, and vehicles jostled for space on the tarmac. The commander's face was pale, jaw tight, sweat glistening on his temples. His voice boomed over the comms, repeating orders in vain. Emily's sharp eyes tracked the enemy formation, noting each plane's trajectory, speed, and spacing. They were moving in perfect coordination, unaware that someone was ready to intercept them, someone they would never see coming until it was too late. As Emily climbed into a higher altitude, she surveyed the horizon. 8 enemy jets, sleek and deadly, moved like shadows across the clouds, already strategizing to surround her. Her mind raced, calculating angles, escape routes, and attack patterns. Every muscle, every nerve in her body remembered the countless simulations, the live missions, the moments when life and death hung on a fraction of a second. She remembered a saying her instructor had drilled into her: "You don't survive because you're faster. You survive because you're smarter." Back at the control tower, a mix of disbelief and awe rippled through the personnel. Soldiers and officers who had doubted her mere minutes ago now watched in tense anticipation. "She's serious," muttered one mechanic, leaning on a railing, eyes glued to the radar screen. The green dot representing Emily's jet was a lone point of hope against a swarm of red. The tension was almost unbearable. The convoys on the ground were sitting targets, vulnerable to the devastating firepower of the enemy formation. Time was slipping away, and every heartbeat counted. Suddenly, one of the enemy jets broke formation, moving slightly ahead of the others. Emily's instincts sharpened. She analyzed its position, calculating the speed and projected path. The first attack maneuver had to be precise. If she misjudged it, the consequences would be catastrophic. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from pure focus. She had been here before, in situations where split-second decisions decided who lived and who didn't. "Target in sight," she whispered into her comms, though no one could respond in time. The first missile locked on the lead jet. Emily's hands moved instinctively over the controls, guiding her craft into a sharp dive to align perfectly. The enemy pilot likely had no idea someone was targeting him. The missile fired with a roar, streaking through the sky with deadly precision. Seconds later, a bright explosion illuminated the clouds. The lead jet shredded into flames and smoke, tumbling downward. A cheer erupted from the control tower, but Emily didn't notice. Her eyes were fixed on the remaining 7. The enemy formation tightened instantly, confused by the sudden destruction of one of their own. They assumed an unseen ally had joined them, or that the attack came from an unexpected angle. Emily used that split-second hesitation to her advantage. She climbed sharply, banking to the left, disappearing briefly into a cloud bank, a ghost among the mist. One jet broke from formation to follow her. Emily let it think it had the advantage, diving sharply, and then pulling upward at the last instant. The pursuing jet overshot as she fired her cannon. Sparks and metal ripped through the enemy fighter, sending it plummeting toward the earth. 2 down, 6 to go. The enemy formation scrambled, reacting too late, and Emily's heart surged with adrenaline. She wasn't just fighting. She was hunting, orchestrating a deadly dance where she dictated the pace, the rhythm, the outcome. Her fuel gauges blinked in warning, but she ignored them for now. Every second she delayed could save or cost lives below. The remaining enemy jets regrouped, circling her with renewed aggression. They communicated over encrypted channels, coordinating an attack that assumed she was inexperienced, that she was just one pilot against 8 seasoned enemies. They underestimated her a mistake that would cost them. Emily tilted her jet into another maneuver, rolling sharply, flipping upside down, and twisting around the clouds. The enemy jets opened fire. Missiles streaked past, some dangerously close, others detonating mid-air as Emily narrowly avoided them. She had become an extension of the F-16 itself. Every movement was calculated, precise, deliberate. She feigned vulnerability, baiting one enemy closer, then cut her power and slid behind it, firing a precise shot that shredded its tail. 3 down, 5 remained. Her pulse was steady, her mind razor-sharp, as she calculated the next series of maneuvers. The sky was chaos, a storm of sound, fire, and motion. Emily felt herself slip into a zone she hadn't experienced in years, a pure, unfiltered combination of instinct, skill, and adrenaline. Every movement was perfect, every decision crucial. She twisted, turned, and climbed with impossible agility, using the sun to blind enemy pilots and cloud cover to vanish from radar. She was everywhere and nowhere at once, a phantom they couldn't touch. Back at the base, soldiers leaned over railings, mouths open in awe. They had doubted her. Some had even laughed. But now, watching a lone logistics officer dismantle 8 enemy jets with precision and calm, they realized that courage and skill often came disguised in ordinary forms. Emily had become legend in minutes, and yet she didn't celebrate. Every move, every shot, every maneuver was calculated to ensure the survival of those below. Victory was not a thought, it was her duty. The remaining 5 enemy jets grew frantic. Their formation tightened, desperate to protect each other, but Emily stayed one step ahead. She darted through the sky like lightning, striking unpredictably, using every trick she had learned in years of combat. One jet followed her too closely, another feigned weakness, a sudden drop, and the jet overshot, spiraling downward as her cannon fire tore through it. 4 down, only 4 left. Emily's fuel warning blinked again, a sharp reminder that her time was limited. Yet she didn't hesitate. She climbed into a high-altitude pass, using the clouds as cover, then dove straight at the remaining formation. Missiles streaked toward her from every direction, a deadly storm. She rolled sideways, letting 2 missiles collide mid-air, detonating. In a fiery explosion, 1 enemy jet shattered. 3 remained. Her mind calculated the remaining threat, her hands moving like trained extensions of her thoughts. Each maneuver was more daring than the last, a mixture of cunning, experience, and raw nerve. Emily wasn't merely surviving, she was controlling the battlefield, dictating the flow of combat. Her enemies had underestimated her, and that would be their undoing. The enemy leader, realizing his formation had been decimated, tried to retreat. Emily had anticipated this. She fired her last missile, watching it streak through the air, striking the jet's engine and forcing it into a nosedive. Smoke trailed across the sky, a testament to her skill and precision. Only 1 enemy remained. Exhausted, low on fuel, and beaten in morale, it turned and fled. Emily banked her jet, her muscles tired but steady. Below, the convoys she had protected were untouched. The base was safe, at least for now. Her pulse finally began to slow, though her senses remained sharp. She knew the fight wasn't entirely over, war never truly ended, but in that moment, she allowed herself the smallest, quietest sense of victory. She had faced 8 enemy jets alone and emerged triumphant. The soldiers at the base erupted in cheers, running toward the radar screens and hangars, shouting her name. Emily, still in the sky, allowed herself a brief smile under her helmet. She hadn't flown for recognition, but it had found her anyway. And in that moment, Emily Carter, the quiet logistics officer, became a legend. The last remaining enemy jet peeled off, retreating at a sharp angle toward the horizon. Emily didn't pursue immediately. Her eyes scanned the sky, calculating distance, speed, and fuel levels. She could see the pilot's desperation in the flight path, the slight tremor in his maneuvers, the overcorrection in every turn. He had been caught off guard, underestimated, and now he was scrambling to survive. Emily's heart remained steady. This wasn't about pride or glory, it was about strategy. She would end this without unnecessary risk. Every second mattered. The base below erupted in cheers as the radar screens showed the collapse of the enemy formation. Soldiers leaned over consoles, pointing at blips that exploded into flames in succession. The disbelief was palpable. They had not seen anyone execute maneuvers like Emily's in decades. A few whispered, "Is she even real?" Emily's calm precision in the air made her seem almost superhuman. She had become the personification of the pilot's creed: situational awareness, patience, and calculated aggression. She adjusted her altitude, banking sharply to the left, and took advantage of the late morning sun glinting off the clouds. Her jet became invisible, blending with the sky, while she closed the gap on the lone enemy fighter. The pilot tried to take evasive action, banking left and right, climbing and diving, but Emily anticipated each movement, predicting his actions before they happened. Years of instinct and training had honed her mind into a machine capable of thinking faster than a human could react. She activated her targeting system, locking onto the enemy jet's trajectory. The distance closed quickly, and the pilot realized, far too late, that Emily had positioned herself perfectly behind him. One burst from her cannon shredded the rear stabilizers, sending the enemy jet into a nosedive. She could see the fire trailing from the aircraft as it spiraled downward, vanishing into the clouds below. Only one remained. Emily exhaled briefly. Though her muscles remained tense, her senses razor-sharp. She didn't allow herself to feel victory just yet. The enemy was still airborne, and one desperate jet could still wreak havoc if it made it to the convoys. She studied the pilot's maneuvers carefully. He was skilled, competent, but panic had crept into his movements. The slightest miscalculation now would cost him everything. Emily smiled beneath her helmet. Experience and calm always triumphed over fear. The lone enemy attempted to regain composure, banking sharply, trying to use cloud cover to escape. Emily followed at a steady distance, keeping within range, but not committing too early. She was the hunter, he was the prey. The battlefield stretched beneath them, a chaotic landscape of clouds, sunlight, and contrails. Emily's jet hummed beneath her fingers like an extension of her body, responding with perfect precision to every command. "Time to end this," she muttered quietly. Her mind ran through options: missiles, cannon fire, a high-G maneuver. To force a stall, anything that would guarantee victory without excessive risk. She considered every scenario, predicting the pilot's possible reactions, adjusting her approach with surgical accuracy. The enemy was talented, yes, but desperate. Desperation is predictable, and Emily had learned long ago to exploit predictability. She dove toward the enemy, using a sharp descent to gain speed and surprise. The pilot's eyes widened as he realized her intent, but he was too slow. Emily fired her missile, tracking perfectly. The enemy pilot twisted sharply, attempting to dodge, but the missile was already aligned. A bright explosion erupted against the clouds, shaking the air around her cockpit. Smoke and debris spiraled downward. She banked away, maintaining perfect control, her jet responding flawlessly. As she leveled off, Emily allowed herself a brief glance toward the base. Soldiers poured out onto the runways, some waving, some cheering, unable to contain their excitement. The radar showed only her lone blip, with the enemy threat neutralized. She felt a rush of satisfaction, but not arrogance. She hadn't acted for recognition. She had acted because she had to. Her mind was already running through post-engagement. Protocols, checking fuel levels, planning landing approach, and calculating possible emergency contingencies. The last enemy jet hadn't been defeated yet, and Emily remained cautious. She noted subtle changes in the aircraft's flight pattern. A shallow dive followed by an awkward climb. Panic had reduced the pilot's precision. Emily took advantage, maneuvering above him, keeping the sun behind her, blinding the pilot momentarily. She dove with the sun at her back, forcing him to overcorrect. The jet wobbled in midair. She fired another missile. Impact. Flames streaked across the sky as the aircraft spiraled downward, vanishing below. Emily leveled off, wings steady, canopy reflecting the morning sun. She took a slow, controlled breath. The sky was clear, the enemy eliminated, and the convoys below were untouched. She allowed herself a brief smile. 8 enemy jets, skilled and coordinated, had been defeated by a single pilot. And yet, despite the thrill and precision of victory, she felt no arrogance. The mission had been about survival, strategy, and duty, not glory. Her fingers brushed the controls, adjusting the autopilot slightly, allowing her to focus on descent calculations. She checked fuel levels, low but sufficient for a controlled return. Systems were functioning optimally, despite the strain from high-G maneuvers and rapid accelerations. Emily allowed herself a moment of reflection. She had been out of combat for years, reassigned to the mundane tasks of logistics. And yet, when faced with immediate threat, instinct and skill had returned perfectly. She realized, as she often had before, that true ability never disappears. It only waits for opportunity. Below, the base continued its chaos of celebration. Soldiers cheered, hugging one another, shouting her name. The commander approached the communications tower, radio in hand, still stunned by the unfolding events. "She did it," he said quietly, almost in disbelief. Mechanics shook their heads, muttering phrases like, "I can't believe it." Just unbelievable. Emily didn't need recognition. She had done her job, and the base was safe. Yet the looks of awe and respect were unmistakable, a tangible recognition she had not sought, but had undeniably earned. Emily began her descent, carefully adjusting for wind conditions, turbulence, and potential obstacles. The jet hummed beneath her, perfectly responsive. Every control input was precise, every maneuver deliberate. The base's runway expanded below her like a lifeline, guiding her safely back. Her heart rate gradually returned to normal, though her mind remained alert. In moments like these, relaxation came only after mission completion, never during. As she approached the runway, ground crews waved, signaling that all systems were clear. Emily brought the jet into a controlled approach, adjusting throttle and flaps. She touched down smoothly, engines roaring, and applied brakes with finesse, stopping precisely at the designated area. The jet's systems powered down with a soft hiss. Emily unclasped her harness, opened the canopy, and climbed out. Sunlight glinted off her helmet as she removed it, hair damp, eyes bright. The soldiers rushed forward, clapping her back, some shaking her hands, others patting her shoulder. The commander stepped up, his face a mixture of relief and admiration. "Emily, you saved us all," he said, voice low, almost reverent. She smiled faintly, acknowledging him but saying nothing. She didn't need words. Her actions had spoken louder than any praise could. Mechanics circled the jet, inspecting it quickly for damage, shaking their heads in awe. Emily stepped back, surveying the sky she had just dominated. 8 enemy jets, coordinated and deadly, had been dismantled through skill, precision, and calm determination. And yet, she felt no triumphal arrogance. This had been about protecting lives, safeguarding the base, and fulfilling duty. The quiet logistics officer, underestimated by everyone, had just demonstrated her true capability in the most extraordinary circumstances. Emily's gaze drifted back toward the horizon, scanning for any residual threats. The sky was clear. The convoys remained intact. Mission accomplished. She allowed herself a small exhale, savoring the brief moment of calm before returning to normal operations. Her instincts, once dormant in the logistics office, had returned flawlessly when tested. Emily Carter had faced overwhelming odds and prevailed. And for the first time in years, she realized just how alive she felt when every decision carried weight, risk, and consequence. The sky, once a peaceful expanse of blue, had become a battlefield. Smoke trails from destroyed enemy jets streaked across the horizon, twisted remnants of fire and metal marking the carnage Emily had wrought. Despite her calm exterior, adrenaline still thrummed through her veins. She adjusted her visor, scanning the sky for any hint of further enemy reinforcements. One pilot remained, a last desperate fighter trying to escape her grasp, but Emily didn't chase recklessly. She had learned long ago that patience, precision, and strategy always trumped brute force. The enemy pilot, frantic and exhausted, banked sharply, attempting to use the cloud cover to shake her pursuit. Emily tilted her jet, seamlessly following, blending into the clouds herself, a shadow moving unseen. She watched the enemy's movements like a hawk, noting every twitch, every correction. Fear was evident in the pilot's trajectory, a subtle overcompensation in the climb, a hesitation in the roll. Emily's lips curved in a slight, almost imperceptible smile. Panic was predictable. Panic was exploitable. She began her approach, calculating velocity, altitude, wind speed, and the enemy's center of gravity. Back at the base, soldiers had barely begun to celebrate the victory over the previous 7 enemy fighters when the radar showed a final blip, a single red dot fleeing toward the far horizon. A low murmur spread through the command center. Even after such overwhelming success, Emily's job was not yet finished. The commander tightened his grip on the radio, watching as the green dot Emily's jet streaked toward the lone enemy. With calculated precision, mechanics held their breath, soldiers pressed against the radar screens, everyone aware that a single mistake could undo the victory of the last 30 minutes. Emily dove through the clouds, the roar of her engine vibrating through her body. Her mind raced through maneuvers, attack angles, and contingency plans. She had taught herself long ago never to rely on luck-only skill, anticipation, and mental clarity. Every movement of her jet was a product of instinct, honed by thousands of hours in combat. The enemy pilot tried to loop back toward a convoy, perhaps hoping to cause damage before she could intercept. Emily anticipated this immediately, banking sharply to cut him off. "Not today," she muttered under her breath. The enemy fired a missile. Emily twisted her jet violently, rolling into a cloud to evade. The missile streaked past, missing by mere meters, exploding harmlessly in the sky. The pilot overcorrected. In panic, wobbling in midair, Emily seized the opportunity. She lined up her cannon, the crosshairs centering perfectly on the unstable fighter. A burst of fire shredded its tail stabilizers. Sparks flew as the jet began spinning uncontrollably. Emily pulled back, maintaining altitude, ensuring the last. Enemy was incapacitated without putting herself at undue risk. Even now, Emily's thoughts were methodical. She monitored her fuel levels, calculated her descent path, and kept a mental map of the terrain below. The final enemy pilot struggled to regain control, but was too inexperienced to stabilize the aircraft. Emily watched carefully, resisting the instinct to fire another missile. Sometimes, letting the enemy make mistakes is the most effective weapon. The pilot's desperation became more evident with every passing second sharp. Erratic turns, overcompensated maneuvers, wide arcs that left him exposed. Her jet hummed beneath her, steady, precise, responding to every command. Emily felt the familiar exhilaration that only flight and combat could give, an intoxicating mix of adrenaline, control, and focus. This wasn't arrogance, it was clarity. The world below, the horizon, the clouds, they all existed to frame the theater in which she performed. Each maneuver, each calculation, each flick of the throttle was deliberate. She had faced worse odds, and now she had engineered the outcome. She forced the enemy pilot toward open air, away from convoys, away from any innocents who could be harmed. Then, at the perfect moment, Emily climbed above him, sunlight glinting off her wings momentarily, blinding him. She banked sharply and dove, missiles aligned. The pilot twisted, panicked, and fired his remaining weapons in a futile attempt to hit her. Emily's crosshairs remained fixed, her fingers steady. With a sharp squeeze, the missile launched. The impact was immediate. Flames erupted across the enemy fighter, twisting it in the air as it spiraled downward. Emily banked away, ensuring a safe distance, watching the last adversary disappear into the clouds. Silence descended over the sky, broken only by the roar of her own engine. One by one, the enemy formation had been neutralized. 8 aircraft, skilled and coordinated, had been eliminated by one pilot. Below, the base erupted into euphoric chaos. Soldiers cheered, some fell to their knees, overcome with disbelief and relief. The commander radioed in, voice trembling. All threats neutralized. She did it. Incredible. Mechanics patted each other on the back, shaking their heads. Emily's quiet, unassuming reputation had been shattered in the most spectacular fashion. She was no longer just a logistics officer, she was legend. Even as the adrenaline began to fade, Emily's focus remained razor-sharp. She performed a final systems check, confirming fuel, engine temperature, and weapon status. Her jet had held up flawlessly under extreme stress, a testament to both her skill and the craft's engineering. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, taking in the vast expanse of the sky, the clouds, and the horizon she had dominated. Her descent toward the base began, measured and precise. Every maneuver accounted for wind, turbulence, and ground obstacles. Soldiers on the tarmac waved and signaled as she approached. Emily adjusted flaps, checked alignment, and prepared for landing. The runway stretched below like a lifeline, guiding her down. She touched down smoothly, engines roaring, brakes applied with exactitude, and the jet slowed to a halt in the designated zone. The canopy hissed as it powered down, sealing the silence after the storm. Emily unclasped her harness, climbed out, and removed her helmet. Her hair was damp, her face streaked with sweat, but her eyes shone with the clarity of victory. Soldiers rushed forward, clapping her on the back, shaking hands, shouting her name. Even the commander, usually stoic and composed, could not hide his amazement. "You saved this base," he said, voice low, reverent. Emily merely nodded, accepting their gratitude quietly. She had not flown for recognition. She had flown to protect, to defend, to fulfill her duty. Yet the acknowledgement was inevitable. Every soldier who had doubted her now looked at her with awe. The quiet, unassuming officer had faced 8 enemy jets alone and emerged victorious. Mechanics inspected the jet, murmuring in disbelief. Emily stood back, surveying the scene, her mind already running post-engagement checks, debriefs, and mental notes for future reference. She had executed the impossible, but she remained meticulous, disciplined, and controlled. Every moment of the battle had been calculated, every maneuver purposeful. And though the danger had passed, Emily's awareness remained heightened, a lingering effect of the combat zone. As the sun glinted off the tarmac, Emily felt a rare sense of exhilaration, not from glory, but from mastery. 8 enemy jets, defeated by one pilot's skill, strategy, and composure, marked a turning point, not only for the base, but for her own understanding of her abilities. She realized something profound: talent and courage, even when hidden for years, can re-emerge when truly tested. Her quiet competence had been her greatest weapon, and it had carried her through the skies like a phantom, untouchable and precise. For the first time in years, Emily allowed herself to smile fully. She had acted with calm skill and clarity under unimaginable pressure. The world now knew her as more than a logistics officer. Today, she had rewritten her own story, proving that extraordinary courage can emerge in the most unexpected forms. The legend of Emily Carter, the pilot who had faced 8 enemy jets alone and won, was only just beginning. Emily leveled off, her jet slicing through the crisp air with mechanical precision. The sky, once a chaotic battlefield, now seemed deceptively calm. Smoke trails from the destroyed enemy jets marked her path, twisting ribbons against the clouds. Her chest heaved slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer intensity of the engagement. 8 enemy fighters, coordinated and lethal, had attempted to overwhelm her. One pilot remained airborne, desperate and panicked, a final vestige of the threat she had already dismantled. But Emily knew better than to assume victory was fully secure. The battle demanded respect, attention, and absolute control. Below her, the base continued in a state of organized chaos. Soldiers cheered, embraced, and shouted her name. The commander gripped the radio, eyes glued to radar screens, disbelief written across his face. "I don't believe it. She's done the impossible," he muttered. Yet Emily didn't allow herself to be distracted. One jet, no matter how alone, could still strike a convoy, destroy infrastructure, or endanger lives. Every maneuver, every calculation had to remain flawless. Her eyes scanned the horizon, tracking the final enemy fighter. The pilot's movements were erratic, now panic, had overtaken strategy. Sharp climbs, sudden dives, tight banking turns. Emily anticipated each, adjusting her speed and trajectory. She didn't fire immediately. Instead, she forced him into open air, away from convoys, away from civilians. The hunter became the guide, the predator shaping the battlefield. She allowed him a sense of fleeting control, knowing he would overextend. The enemy attempted a high-speed dive, possibly aiming for the far side of the base. Emily matched the maneuver, banking sharply, keeping the sun at her back. The enemy pilot blinked against the glare, momentarily disoriented. In that instant, Emily's cannon roared, a calculated burst that tore through the tail stabilizers of the enemy jet. Sparks and smoke erupted into the sky as the aircraft wobbled, struggling to maintain altitude. Emily banked away, ensuring she maintained a safe distance from any debris. The pilot corrected instinctively, but it was too late. Emily seized the advantage, using a steep climb to gain altitude and position herself above him. Her mind ran through contingency plans even as she maneuvered. If he tried evasive action, she would anticipate it. If he attempted to flee toward open sky, she had calculated interception angles. Years of training, thousands of hours in combat simulations, night flights, and live engagements converged into flawless execution. She was no longer just a pilot. She was a force of nature in the sky. From the base, the radar screens showed the final confrontation. Soldiers leaned forward, eyes wide, some holding their breath. Emily's single green dot was locked on the last red dot, moving in an intricate aerial dance. A low murmur spread among the crowd. Is she going to finish this alone? The tension was palpable. Even the commander, seasoned and unflappable, couldn't hide the mix of awe and apprehension. He could only hope her years of training would carry her through. Emily executed a series of maneuvers designed to exhaust the enemy pilot. A sharp roll, a rapid descent, followed by a sudden climb. Each movement forced the enemy into overcorrection, creating instability. Sweat dripped along her temple, but her mind remained razor-sharp, predicting the opponent's every move. The pilot fired missiles in desperation, but Emily anticipated them perfectly, twisting and rolling, letting one missile overshoot and detonating harmlessly far behind her. She maintained calm while the enemy descended deeper into chaos. The battle had become a test of nerves as much as skill. Emily allowed herself a subtle smile. The enemy pilot, talented but overwhelmed, could not match her precision. She maneuvered behind him, closing the distance, keeping her crosshairs aligned. One final, precise burst from her cannon shredded the remaining stabilizers. Flames erupted from the enemy jet as it began spiraling downward uncontrollably. Emily pulled back, maintaining altitude, ensuring no debris could endanger anything below. One by one, the threats she faced were now gone. Even with the danger past, Emily didn't allow herself to relax completely. She checked fuel levels, engine temperature, and system integrity, confirming that her jet had handled every high-G maneuver flawlessly. She calculated her landing approach, accounting for potential wind shifts, runway obstacles, and possible mechanical stress from the intense aerial combat. Emily's professionalism, honed over years of training, ensured that she was never complacent. Each phase of the operation, from engagement to descent, required meticulous calculation, precision, and focus. Below, the convoys she had protected continued their operations uninterrupted. Soldiers cheered as they saw her jet approaching, signaling their gratitude and awe. Emily banked toward the runway, gradually descending with measured control. Every adjustment of throttle, every slight tilt of the wings, every shift of weight in the cockpit was deliberate. She aligned perfectly with the tarmac, gliding her fighter into a controlled landing, engines roaring as she applied precise braking. The jet came to a complete stop in the designated zone. She unclasped her harness and opened the canopy, emerging into the bright sunlight. Sweat glistened on her forehead, hair damp, but her eyes shone with calm clarity. Soldiers surged forward, clapping her back, shaking her hands, shouting her name in jubilation. The commander approached, his usual composure shaken. "Emily, you've done something extraordinary today," he said, his voice heavy with awe. Emily simply nodded. Words weren't necessary. Her actions had spoken louder than any praise could. Mechanics and ground crews swarmed the jet, inspecting for damage, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Emily stepped back, surveying the scene. 8 enemy jets, skilled and coordinated, had been dismantled by a single pilot. She had not sought glory, but her ability and courage had earned recognition in a dramatic and undeniable way. For the soldiers who had doubted her, today would be unforgettable. She had become a symbol of courage, precision, and excellence. Even as she began to remove her flight gear, Emily's mind remained sharp, reviewing the engagement, analyzing maneuvers, and noting areas for improvement. Victory was never about ego. It was about survival, strategy, and the lives of those depending on her. The battlefield above, the chaos of the engagement, and the exhilaration of high-speed combat would fade, but the lessons and the legacy of this mission would remain. Emily glanced up at the sky one final time. The clouds, now serene and unbroken, seemed almost innocent after the violence of the past hour. She felt a surge of quiet satisfaction. 8 enemy jets had been neutralized. The convoys were safe. Her base remained intact. She had proven in the most extraordinary circumstances that skill, discipline, and courage could defy expectation. Today, she had faced overwhelming odds, and she had emerged victorious. The base erupted in celebration as Emily's jet powered down completely. Soldiers cheered, clapped, and embraced one another. The commander radioed in, voice shaking. "All threats neutralized. Outstanding work. Impossible, but you've done it." Emily allowed herself a faint, knowing smile. She hadn't flown for recognition, but sometimes recognition finds those who act with true skill, courage, and purpose. As the adrenaline slowly ebbed, Emily removed her helmet, letting the wind cool her face. Her uniform was damp with sweat, her expression calm but proud. Today, the quiet logistics officer had become a legend. 8 enemy jets, defeated by 1 pilot. She had faced the impossible and succeeded. Emily Carter had not just survived, she had dominated. And the story of her extraordinary skill would be remembered for years to come. The roar of her jet faded as Emily powered down the engines, leaving behind the acrid smell of smoke and ozone. The once blue sky now bore the scars of aerial combat trails of smoke, flashes of fire, and debris from the destroyed enemy jets drifting toward the horizon. Her pulse was steady, though adrenaline lingered like an echo, heightening her senses. She remained hyper-alert, scanning the surroundings, analyzing the aftermath. Victory was not complete until the base was secure, and Emily understood that all too well. Soldiers swarmed around her F-16, shouting congratulations, cheering, and patting her shoulders. Some were overwhelmed, unable to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. 8 enemy jets, coordinated, skilled, and aggressive, had been dismantled by a single pilot. Emily's eyes scanned the crowd, noting their awe and disbelief. But she didn't pause to soak in the accolades. Duty demanded clarity. Every surviving convoy, every operational system, every soldier's safety remained her responsibility until the immediate threat was fully neutralized. The commander approached, urgency now tempered by relief. His voice carried across the tarmac. "Emily, we've got a few stragglers in the eastern sector. Potential enemy infiltration. You need to oversee." Emily nodded without hesitation. Her mind shifted immediately from triumph to tactical assessment. Even in victory, she had learned to anticipate residual dangers. She climbed back into the cockpit, conducting a swift systems check to ensure all critical functions remained operational. The jet hung beneath her hands, perfectly responsive, despite the extreme maneuvers it had endured during the battle. She lifted off again, though at a measured pace, ascending to a tactical altitude to monitor the eastern perimeter. Radar screens displayed several blips, movement inconsistent with standard base operations. Emily analyzed them quickly. Small, fast-moving targets attempting to slip past detection, likely scouting units or reconnaissance drones. She adjusted her approach, banking slightly to obscure her jet against the sun, making it harder for potential threats to detect her presence. Years of training had taught her that caution in victory often prevented disaster. The eastern perimeter stretched beneath her, dotted with supply convoys and strategic infrastructure. Emily executed precise surveillance passes, her eyes scanning every movement with near-perfect attention. She noted a small group of enemy operatives attempting to bypass checkpoints. Their speed suggested desperation. She adjusted her flight path, moving silently above them, and called in coordinates to base security teams. Precision was critical. A miscalculation could compromise operational security or endanger civilians. Emily was meticulous. Every decision deliberate, every maneuver calculated. Ground teams responded swiftly, converging on the infiltrators. Emily's eyes tracked the engagement from above, ensuring their path was contained and monitored. The enemy operatives attempted to disperse, but were met with coordinated interception, effectively neutralizing the threat without unnecessary risk. The tension gradually eased as security confirmed containment. Emily exhaled slowly, though her alertness did not waver. This was part of her job. The aftermath, the mop-up, the assurance that victory was complete and sustainable. Even as the immediate threat ended, Emily's mind ran through operational debriefs. She reviewed fuel consumption, aircraft stress logs, and tactical decisions. Every engagement, from the first missile fired to the final interception, provided data she cataloged meticulously. Her post-battle analysis would be critical for improving future protocols and training exercises. Emily's discipline had always extended beyond the cockpit. Victory in the air required as much strategic oversight on the ground. She descended for a final flyby over the base, her jet slicing through the sky with controlled precision. Soldiers looked up, some waving, some cheering, and others simply absorbing the magnitude of her actions. Emily noted the operational integrity of the convoys below. Fuel trucks were intact, supply lines secure, and communications channels fully functional. Her meticulous oversight ensured no resources had been lost. Victory had been achieved with minimal collateral risk, a testament to her skill, foresight, and unwavering focus. The commander approached again as she landed, this time with a more composed demeanor. Emily, we need to discuss the post-engagement procedures and prepare a full debrief. This is going to change everything for the base. Emily nodded. She exited the cockpit, removing her helmet and gloves, sweat dampening her hair, but determination blazing in her eyes. She had not sought recognition, but the weight of responsibility rested heavily on her shoulders. Leadership was now both formal and earned through action, skill, and decisive execution. The debriefing commenced in the command center, a room buzzing with energy and respect. Emily outlined every engagement point, explaining her tactical decisions, evasive maneuvers, and prioritization of threats. She provided detailed assessments of enemy strategies, vulnerabilities, and anticipated responses. Soldiers and officers listened intently, some taking notes, others simply absorbing the precision and insight displayed. For many, this was a revelation, an example of individual skill, shaping the course of an engagement and safeguarding lives in the process. During the debrief, Emily also emphasized operational discipline and risk mitigation. She noted the importance of maintaining composure under extreme stress, tracking environmental variables, and anticipating enemy responses. Her words carried authority, born not from rank, but from lived experience. Every detail of her engagement became a lesson in strategy, patience, and precision. Those present could see clearly that Emily's skill was not luck, it was meticulous, methodical, and honed over years of rigorous training and real-world experience. The commander concluded the debrief, his voice a mixture of awe and relief. Emily Carter, your actions today were extraordinary. You've demonstrated that courage, precision, and strategy can turn impossible situations into victory. The base owes you more than words can express. Emily inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the praise without pride. Her satisfaction came from the assurance that the mission had been successful, lives had been protected, and operational integrity maintained. Recognition was secondary to duty fulfilled. Even as the formalities concluded, Emily's mind remained alert. She reviewed remaining security protocols, double-checked that all convoys were safe, and ensured that communications channels remained secure. Her jet had performed flawlessly, but she knew that operational readiness extended beyond immediate combat. Maintenance teams were already performing diagnostics. Fuel levels were being replenished, and contingency plans were updated. Victory was fleeting if preparation and discipline were not maintained. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the base, Emily allowed herself a brief pause. She stood on the tarmac, surveying the expanse of sky she had dominated just hours ago. Smoke trails lingered faintly in the distance, marking the sights of downed enemy jets. The convoys, now safely resuming their routes, glinted in the fading sunlight. Emily felt a rare sense of satisfaction, not from recognition, but from fulfillment. She had done her duty flawlessly, with precision, courage, and foresight. The base personnel, now calmer, began organizing for routine operations. Soldiers moved with renewed purpose, aware that their survival had hinged on extraordinary skill and decision-making. Emily walked back toward the command center, her posture calm but alert, mind already cataloging the day's events. She reflected on the intense aerial engagements, the calculated maneuvers, and the flawless execution that had safeguarded countless lives. In her quiet, determined way, she had reshaped the perception of what was possible in combat, proving that skill and courage, even in one individual, could change outcomes dramatically. Emily Carter, the logistics officer who had been underestimated by almost everyone, now stood as a symbol of competence, bravery, and extraordinary talent. Her calm determination, unparalleled skill, and unwavering focus had secured not just the base but the lives of everyone who relied on it. And though the skies would one day return to routine, the lessons, strategies, and legacy of her engagement would endure, shaping future operations and inspiring all who witnessed her remarkable feat. Emily's jet rested silently on the tarmac, but she felt no relief. The adrenaline had faded slightly, yet her senses remained razor-sharp. Victory over the enemy jets had been decisive, but Emily knew better than to trust calm skies. Intelligence. Reports were being compiled, radar sweeps performed, and reconnaissance drones dispatched. Something always lurked beyond the horizon, something she could not ignore. Her mind catalogued every possibility, every contingency. She had survived impossible odds once. Complacency could not follow Dot suddenly. Her cum crackled. Emily, weave, detected multiple incoming aerial contacts, high speed, low altitude, possibly reinforcements. The commander's voice was tense but controlled. Emily's pulse quickened, not with fear, but with that familiar surge of clarity she felt before every engagement. 8 had already fallen. Could there be more? She didn't wait for confirmation. Every second counted. She climbed into her jet with precise efficiency, checking systems, fueling up auxiliary tanks, and performing pre-flight diagnostics. The sky above the base had already shifted. Clouds rolled in unexpectedly, scattering sunlight and creating shadows that could obscure enemy movement. Emily ascended swiftly, the hum of her jet steady beneath her, as she locked onto the blips on radar. The incoming units were moving in. Formations smaller than the previous enemy force, but no less dangerous. They were fast, aggressive, and coordinated. Emily's mind raced through attack scenarios. She had one chance to intercept, Before they reached the base, her approach was deliberate. She banked left, using cloud cover to remain undetected, watching the radar for the precise moment to engage. The enemy formation had noticed nothing yet. Emily calculated the speed differential, factoring wind currents, the sun's glare, and her jet's maximum acceleration. Years of simulations and past missions compressed into seconds of decision-making. One miscalculation could allow them through. She adjusted her targeting systems, bringing the lead jet into crosshairs while maintaining altitude control. The first missile fired, slicing through the air with pinpoint accuracy. The lead enemy jet erupted in flames, its trajectory spiraling downward. Two more launched in rapid succession, but Emily didn't pause. She maneuvered with fluid precision, keeping her jet aligned for maximum tactical advantage. The remaining enemy units responded, splitting into two groups to flank her. Emily's mind anticipated the split even before it occurred. She dove, using gravity and speed to surprise the left flank, while banking sharply to intercept the right. Explosions streaked across the clouds as she executed a series of maneuvers. So precise it seemed impossible. Her jet twisted, rolled, and ascended with near-superhuman agility. Missiles streaked past her cockpit. She twisted into clouds to evade, letting some overcorrect and collide in midair. Her pulse remained steady, focus absolute. Emily was no longer fighting merely to survive. She was orchestrating the battlefield. Each enemy maneuver was countered. Almost instinctively, her strategic foresight anticipating their desperate attempts to regain control. Below, the base watched as radar blips collided, vanished, and reappeared. Soldiers, previously celebrating the victory, now leaned into consoles, eyes wide with renewed awe. Emily was fighting once again, not alone, but facing multiple threats at once, each requiring split-second analysis and reaction. The calm precision of a single pilot against multiple adversaries was mesmerizing. The commander's voice came over the comm, almost in disbelief. She's handling them all perfectly. Incredible. Emily banked sharply, forcing the left flank into an aggressive climb. Missiles fired from her jet found their mark, destroying two enemy units. The right flank attempted to regroup, but she anticipated their coordination. A series of rolls and dives brought her behind the remaining three, exploiting gaps in formation caused by their panic. One by one, the jets spiraled downward, explosions igniting against the clouds. Emily's calculated aggression and flawless execution left no room for error, no margin for failure. The final two enemy jets attempted to flee, banking sharply toward open sky. Emily accelerated, closing the distance with surgical precision. The first missile locked on. The pilot twisted, attempting evasive maneuvers, but Emily anticipated each overcorrection. Impact. Flames ripped across the first jet, sending it tumbling. Uncontrollably. Only one remained. Emily leveled off, giving herself a brief moment to analyze fuel, position, and angle. The last jet was desperate, flying erratically, attempting to escape, but trapped by her calculated interception path. She let him make the first move, feigning hesitation. The pilot's erratic behavior became predictable. Emily banked sharply, climbing above him, sun at her back to blind his vision, then rolled, diving in a high-speed pass. Missiles streaked toward the final target. The jet twisted, overcorrected, and exploded in a brilliant flash of fire and debris. Emily leveled off, wings steady, as silence returned to the sky. All enemy threats had been neutralized, and the base below was entirely secure. Her return to the base was methodical. She descended with careful precision, checking wind currents, turbulence, and approach alignment. The runway expanded below, guiding her safely down. Her jet landed smoothly, brakes applied with exactitude, and the aircraft slowed to a halt in the designated zone. Ground crews and soldiers rushed forward, some cheering, others simply absorbing the magnitude of her victory. Emily unclasped her harness and stepped out, calm but resolute, sweat dampening her hair. Eyes gleaming with focus. The commander approached, a mixture of relief and awe on his face. "Emily, I don't even know what to say. You've handled every threat, multiple engagements, and still landed flawlessly. Incredible." Emily inclined her head slightly, acknowledging the praise, but keeping her composure. Words were secondary to action. Her job was never about recognition. It was about protecting lives, defending the base, and executing every maneuver with perfect clarity. Mechanics and ground crews swarmed the jet for post-engagement diagnostics. Emily reviewed her systems, mentally noting minor wear on hydraulics and slight temperature variations from high-G maneuvers, all within expected limits. Her meticulous approach ensured the jet would remain operational, ready for future deployments. Soldiers gathered around, some still wide-eyed with disbelief, realizing that a single pilot had successfully faced overwhelming odds, maintained composure under extreme stress, and preserved the integrity of the entire operation. Emily's mind, though, remained alert. She supervised security protocols, confirmed convoy safety, and ensured communication channels were secure. She guided the post-engagement efforts with quiet authority, balancing operational oversight with the fatigue and exhilaration still coursing through her. Every decision, every instruction, reinforced the lesson that skill and discipline could achieve what few thought possible. Her calm, precise execution became the standard for future engagement training, the blueprint of how one determined pilot could alter the course of battle. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows over the base, Emily allowed herself a moment to breathe. The sky was calm again, smoke dissipating, the convoys operational, and enemy threats eliminated. Soldiers cheered quietly among themselves, recognizing the extraordinary feat they had witnessed. Emily's presence remained commanding, yet she moved with the quiet efficiency that had defined her from the start. 8 jets defeated, multiple incoming threats neutralized, the base secure. Emily had done the impossible once again. For a moment, she allowed herself a faint smile. The adrenaline slowly ebbed, replaced by calm satisfaction. She had faced overwhelming odds, executed high-stakes maneuvers flawlessly, and protected countless lives. Emily Carter, the quiet logistics officer underestimated by all, had become a legend. Her skill, courage, and precision would be remembered long after the skies cleared, inspiring soldiers and pilots alike. She had not only survived, she had dominated, proving that true ability could never be ignored. A base had finally begun to breathe. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting warm golden light across the tarmac, illuminating the aftermath of a battle few could have imagined. Emily stood beside her jet, helmet in hand, sweat dampening. Her hair, eyes calm but sharp. 8 enemy jets, multiple reinforcements, high-stakes maneuvers, the impossible had been achieved. She had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, and yet she felt no pride, only the quiet satisfaction of a mission completed with precision and courage. Soldiers gathered around, some still cheering, others quietly staring in disbelief. The commander approached, face lined with relief and admiration. "Emily, I don't know how to put this into words. You've done something no one could have imagined. You've changed everything today." Emily nodded modestly, her focus never leaving the operational integrity of the base. She had completed her duty, ensured the safety of convoys and personnel, and neutralized every threat. Recognition, though welcome, was secondary to that fact. The debriefing began. Emily outlined every engagement, detailing tactical decisions, evasive maneuvers, missile deployments, and calculated risks. Officers took notes, trying to understand how a single pilot could accomplish what would have required an entire squadron. Emily emphasized that every maneuver had been dictated by careful observation, anticipation, and precise calculation. She noted environmental factors, fuel management, and threat prioritization. Every word reinforced the lesson that discipline and foresight could triumph over brute force. Her analysis concluded with recommendations for future operations, drawn from the high-stress, high-stakes scenarios she had just navigated. Emily spoke calmly, her tone measured, eyes scanning the room to ensure comprehension. Combat is rarely clean. Decisions must be calculated, anticipatory, and precise. Overconfidence is a liability. Fear is exploitable. Discipline wins battles, not recklessness. The room fell silent, absorbing the weight of her experience. Even the most seasoned officers nodded in understanding, realizing they had witnessed something extraordinary. Outside the command center, the base resumed its routine, but an unmistakable shift had occurred. Soldiers moved with renewed confidence, aware that their survival had hinged on the expertise of one individual. Emily's example had transformed expectations. She had demonstrated that courage, skill, and composure could overcome overwhelming odds, that a single person trained, disciplined, and fearless could alter the course of an entire battle. The legend of Emily Carter was now a tangible reality, whispered across the base with awe and reverence. Even as the celebration continued, Emily remained alert. Security protocols were reviewed, convoys checked, and radar sweeps performed. Ensure no residual threats remained. She oversaw repairs and diagnostics on her jet, noting minor wear from high-G maneuvers and high-speed engagements. Every system functioned perfectly, testament to both her skill and the aircraft's engineering. She moved among the personnel quietly, providing guidance, confirming operational readiness, and ensuring lessons from the battle were recorded and applied. By the time evening fell, the sky was clear, a soft orange glow reflecting off the clouds. Emily walked across the tarmac, watching as soldiers resumed routine duties with renewed precision. She allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought of the 8 enemy jets, the calculated maneuvers, the adrenaline surging through her veins, and the calm clarity that had guided every decision. For years, she had been underestimated, assigned to logistics, overlooked by superiors. Yet today, her skill had reshaped reality. She had proven that extraordinary courage often lies hidden, waiting for opportunity. The commander approached again, voice soft, almost reverent. Emily, the reports are unanimous. The base, the convoys, everyone under your protection. There. Safe. You've rewritten the standards of what one pilot can accomplish. History will remember this. Emily inclined her head, letting the words sink in, but her expression remained steady. Recognition was fleeting. Responsibility endured. She knew that the mission's true victory was measured not in praise, but in lives saved and strategic objectives secured. Mechanics completed final diagnostics on her jet, nodding in approval. At the results, fuel was topped off, hydraulics checked, and systems cleared for future deployment. Emily stepped back, observing quietly, aware of the countless hours of preparation and precision that had contributed to today's success. Every training session, every simulation, every calculated exercise had culminated in this perfect execution. She realized that true mastery was not only about skill, but also about preparation, patience, and the courage to act decisively when tested. As night approached, Emily finally allowed herself a brief exhale. She surveyed the horizon, the clouds, the fading smoke trails of her victories. The convoys were secure, the base intact, and enemy threats neutralized. She felt the rare satisfaction of duty completed, the knowledge that she had performed beyond expectation, and the quiet pride in knowing her actions had saved countless lives. The base, once vulnerable, was now secure, and Emily had ensured that reality matched strategy flawlessly. Soldiers gathered in small groups, recounting the day's events, whispering tales of precision and courage. Emily remained a figure of quiet authority, her reputation now permanent. The legend of the logistics officer turned extraordinary pilot spread like wildfire. Yet she remained modest, attributing success to preparation, focus, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. She understood that heroism is often measured, not by recognition, but by results. And today, she had delivered results beyond comprehension. As the stars began to pierce the night sky, Emily walked back to her quarters, helmet in hand, jet secured behind her. The hum of activity continued, but the base felt transformed, confident, and inspired. She allowed herself one final reflection, considering the lessons learned, the courage demonstrated, and the victories earned. 8 enemy jets, multiple reinforcements. High-stakes maneuvers, the impossible had been achieved, and the impossible had become her reality. Emily Carter had faced overwhelming odds and emerged not only victorious, but legendary. In her quarters, Emily removed her flight gear, letting the adrenaline fade completely. She sat by the window, gazing at the calm, starlit sky. The events of the day replayed in her mind. Each maneuver, each calculation, each split-second decision that had determined life or death. She smiled faintly, not from vanity, but from a profound understanding of her own capability. She had been underestimated for years, assigned to routine work, overlooked by peers and superiors. Today, she had redefined herself entirely. Emily's thoughts lingered on the pilots she had faced, their skills, their desperation, and the perfection of her strategy. 8 jets, 8 lives neutralized in the context of combat, yet every action was calculated to minimize risk to herself and the base. She reflected on the precision required, the patience exercised, and the instinctual decisions that had guided her through each engagement. Victory had not been easy, but it had been total. The base was secure, and the legend of her skill now undeniable. Finally, Emily allowed herself to rest, confident that the base was secure and that the lessons of the day would endure. The sun had set, the sky was calm, and a sense of completion settled over her. She had faced the impossible and emerged victorious, a symbol of skill, courage, and determination. Emily Carter had rewritten the expectations of what one individual could accomplish, proving that preparation, focus, and extraordinary courage could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. The night grew deeper, and Emily closed her eyes, letting the events of the day solidify into memory. Tomorrow would bring routine, training, and preparation, but today remained a testament to her unparalleled skill. The base slept safely under her watch. Convoys continued uninterrupted, and the skies were clear. Emily Carter, the quiet logistics officer who had been underestimated by all, had faced 8 enemy jets alone and won. Her legacy, hard-earned and undeniable, would endure forever.